maybe a fourth. They're coming out of his beat 6 and 7. Top to Morris has been an 8.
Oh, wow.
No.
SuperCoach365 podcast. Ryan and Tommy back with you. Tommy Hudson back on deck this time. We're going through another 4 teams tonight as we record this on Tuesday night. Tommy, firstly, great to be back, mate. How have you been?
Not too bad, mate. Watched your video with Mr. NRL Don. It was very captivating viewing. Keen to get stuck into the next 4 teams. And it's good to be back.
Of course, what we speak of there is podcast with the NRL Don, where we covered off on a couple of teams, namely the Panthers, South Sydney Rabbitohs, the Gold Coast Titans, and the West Tigers. So I've already been through those 4 with the NRL_Don. If you missed that one, go back and check it out. And if you're not already following the NRL Don on the socials and whatnot, you can find him on Instagram, particularly at NRL Don. Tommy, firstly, mate, big news day in NRL or SuperCoach context. The first teamless Tuesday of the year, albeit an exhibition match. This one, the All Stars team has been named, so looking forward to watching some footy on the weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, we saw the squads last week, I think it was, and we all kind of agreed that the Indigenous was a little bit stronger looking than the Maori, but I have to say, once they've named their actual teams, don't mind the Maori side, to be honest. I like their forward pack. The Indigenous team, very Cronulla Sharks heavy, isn't it, in the back line?
Yeah, good look or good chance to look at what that combination can spit out. Of course, Kennedy, Nico Hines and Trindle you mentioned there. And yeah, a strong team. And I know both sides will give it their all. And it doesn't matter who's out there, I don't think, come Saturday night, they're going to rip in for their respective cultures. And it's always a great game, a great way to kick off the season because it's, I mean, back in our, when I say back in our day, like we're old, but the Charity Shield used to be, our starts of the year, but it's sort of good to get behind this game where you don't have any allegiance to either team, really. Obviously, speaking as a neutral who's not an Indigenous or a Maori person myself. No,
I think it really does, signify that the season has started this game. And I was actually watching Fox League the other night, and they were going back through some of the All Stars games from the past, and back when it was NRL All Stars against the Indigenous, and some of the players that were in the team, Sam Burgess, Benji Marshall, Cameron Smith, all at the peak of their powers, very strong teams. Probably not as strong these days, obviously, but it's still a really good exhibition match, and I'm really keen for it.
Yeah, don't tell the players it's an exhibition match because they obviously play with plenty of pride and passion on the night. We've seen that in recent years, and no doubt we'll see it again this weekend. Someone who we thought may have figured in this clash, Kalyn Ponga, he's not there. Not sure why is he not being allowed to play by the Knights, but he is, I guess, news coming through that he's set to be named the Knights captain. So it shows you his standing at Newcastle again continues to grow. And I guess thoughts initially on that, because I guess in the past we may have been a little bit critical of Kalyn Ponga and his involvement, but now no Mitchell Pearce there, he's really going to have a hands-on role.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I think the other day we mentioned about Fafita. You were saying that you think he could almost be given the captaincy to see how he would grow with the title. And I think it'll be similar with Kalyn. I think he has to go massive this year for the Knights to have any chance. So possibly giving him that responsibility of captain, it could force his hand and it could be the making of him.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I guess I never really looked at it like that. I obviously looked at it from Fafita and his involvement. Ponga's always pretty involved, but maybe just makes him mature a little bit more as a footy player. We'll come to see that throughout the year, no doubt, and I think the Knights are going to be under plenty of pressure. So, baptism of fire for Kalyn Ponga. Another exciting fullback we're talking about here, Reece Walsh. News that he might be on his way out of the Warriors, potentially back to the Broncos or even to Redcliffe. So, I don't know. It's funny because so long we've based this pre-season and the chat's been about Newcastle and maybe Ponga going to Redcliffe. The Dolphins. But I guess if it's not Ponga, is Reece Walsh the next best man on the hit list for Wayne Bennett?
Yeah, he'd be a great signing, wouldn't he? I think he's only 19 still. To have him as your, marquee player at a new club, that would be an awesome marketing tool to have Reece Walsh. And I think on the flip side, Walsh, he has a young family. He's a dad. He was a dad at 18. He probably doesn't want to leave Queensland. Maybe he's keen to just, obviously he's based there now with the Warriors, but when they go home, I can understand why he'd want to stay in Queensland, and the Dolphins is probably a great fit for him.
It's going to be an interesting watch though, isn't it? Because it forces either the Warriors' hand or maybe inadvertently the Knights' hand. How hard do the Knights go to keep Kalen Ponga? Because if Walsh is suddenly off to the Dolphins, then Ponga doesn't really need to go there. Does Ponga want to leave the Knights? I'm not sure. If they're 2-10, like, you know, we may predict them to be at Origin time, maybe he might want to exit the club and go follow Wayne Bennett to Redcliffe. It's an interesting little subplot amongst all of that.
Yeah, I think Walsh is obviously important to the Warriors, but Ponga's importance to the Knights is just ridiculous. I think they obviously have put so much money into him, and I think to lose him in the next, 1 to 2 seasons would be really detrimental to their growth in the next, 5 years, because I just don't think they have many other great young players. He's, the heart soul of that team, so they really need to keep him.
Yeah, we'll talk about Walsh a little bit more when we get to our team-by-team previews. Of course, today, we haven't mentioned it yet, but we are here to chat the Melbourne Storm, the Sea Eagles, Walsh's Warriors, and of course the Cowboys as well. Before we move on from that All Stars team list, though, just a note, happy to see Andrew Fafita back playing some competitive footy. Obviously went through that injury at the back end of last year, and on quite a serious note, we don't get serious too often, Tommy, but would have been a sad way for Andrew to end his career, because not the way he deserves to go out anyway.
Yeah, it was a pretty innocuous looking injury. I remember the game against Newcastle, but then we found out in the hours after that he'd been rushed to hospital. He was in a coma, so it got pretty serious pretty quick. But good to see him back, and on his day, as you would know, being a former Sharks fan, he's absolutely dynamic. So it'd be good to see him back to his fit best.
He has single-handedly the greatest highlight of any grand final moment that we'll ever see, Andrew Fafita. All right, let's lighten the mood a little bit, Tommy, before we get into these team previews. And during the week, we asked, or at the back end of last week, we asked, so often I see this term, the worst kept secret in rugby league, and, it was a secret, like, I don't know. I speak of the Dolphins and the signing of Kenny Bromwich. I think we mentioned that 3 weeks before it was official. But that term, the worst kept secrets in rugby league, got me thinking, what are some of the best kept secrets in rugby league? And threw it out to our listeners. We've got a couple here. Simon Grunstein says, Wayne Bennett handshake deal to coach the Roosters, but never did. Now, that would have been a story back in the mid-2000s if Bennett took control of the likes of Fittler and Wing, Minicello, and all those other types that were down there losing grand finals. Maybe Wayne Bennett would have made it a three-peat with the Roosters in 02, 03, 04.
Yeah, probably a bit before my time of understanding the off-field shenanigans of rugby league, but it would have been incredible, wouldn't it, if they obviously had, I guess, Ricky Stewart during that era, but Wayne Bennett, SuperCoach, would have been a big story.
Still at the Roosters, another one here, Chris Laidley says, Cooper Cronk playing in the 2018 NRL Grand Final, or running out, and Orbo actually playing 7 after Robinson said he was going to play 7. Now, I see the look on your face here. You don't think this is a worst-kept secret?
Well, it's not a best-kept secret. No, I don't think so, because I think anyone with any knowledge and fair dinkum thought on the game knew that Cronk was going to play 7, surely. No one thought Mitch Olsen was actually going to be halfback in a grand final.
It's funny, though, because I actually went to that game that night, and there was the Willie Owoni, and it got to the hour before before kickoff, when the team list were finalised. And I still remember that overwhelming sense of, he actually is going to play. So, I don't know, I've watched the game for many years, and it was an injury. They said it was like a car crash. So, to get him back on the field within a week, and then obviously to win the way they did, pretty impressive by the Roosters. For mine, though, Jared Haynes signing with the Gold Coast Titans in 2016. I just remember being at work one day, and I read the news, and an hour later, Haynes was having a press conference at Seabus Super Stadium. I hadn't heard a whisper of it before that point.
No, that's a good one. I hadn't really thought of it, but you're right. And it's such a pity. I probably can't say a pity, Jared Hayne, because he dug his own grave in terms of NRL and whatever else he's done in his personal life. But that move to Gold Coast should have been a lot better than it was. And he played well for a little while, but it just never really took off. I know he had that moment where he kicked a field goal at Campbelltown, and he was like, this is my house. And it just was all downhill from there, wasn't it, really? But anyway.
Yeah. Oh, well. His own doing, like you say there. I put a little section here for you to say your own, but you said it was hard to think of one. Have you come up with one between now and then?
Oh, it's hard to keep a secret these days in NRL, isn't it? You've got a NRL 360 on every night with Hoops and Buzz spieling their crap. Sometimes they're right, sometimes they're wrong. I don't really have one.
The walls talk, don't they? There's absolutely no secrets in this game. Still on a lighter note before we move on. I've been loving this on Instagram as well, the GrahamWatch. Now, we've been pushing this for about a week now. It's starting to gain a bit of traction with Denon Kemp and Rugby League Guru talking about about Campbell Graham potentially moving to the left side and what that would mean for Souths. Not saying those guys have been listening to us. In fact, I'll say the complete opposite right now. But it's good to sort of see that they're thinking the same way and that we're not too far out of the ballpark in saying that Campbell Graham would be an asset to Souths going down that left side.
Yeah, I think it's a big question. I think it was a great pickup by you when we spoke about the CTWs the other day. And like last year, let's be honest, the South's left side was the hottest thing in the comp. So it's pretty important to see who's going to replace Gagai there. I hope it's Campbell Graham, and I hope your love affair is right.
Yeah, and at least it keeps us entertained between now and Team List Tuesday. Of course, 30 days away, creeping ever closer. Looking forward to that. Tommy, let's talk some footy. This is why we're here. And let's start off with one of the best teams, if not the best team, I think, other than, of course, the Premiers who went on to win the comp. But throughout the regular season, I think it's fair to say the Melbourne Storm were the best team in rounds 1 to 25. And how do you think they'll go again this year? Obviously, the way they finished a disappointment, but they'll take plenty of confidence into 2022, knowing that they went within a whisker, really, of making it another premiership last season.
Yeah, well, it's funny, the Melbourne Storm, isn't it? You know, the last probably 5-6 years, we saw Cronk leave. We thought, will they recover? We saw Slater leave. We saw Smith leave. And each time they just respond. And this year, they haven't really lost an out-and-out gun like that. But then last year, again, without Smith, they kind of did fail in that preliminary final. So I think their judgment day comes in September. But as in rounds 1 to 25, I honestly don't see why they don't win the minor premiership again. Other teams in the mix, you know, Penrith and South, I can make a case as to why they could slide this year, but I don't really see a downside with the Storm.
Yeah, it's hard, and I guess that's one of the burning questions. We'll get to all of them in a sec. You mentioned Cameron Smith there, but you're right. That was the first time really the whole year where they showed a sign of weakness, and up until, actually, I'll speak of, that's another one of the best kept secrets, Cameron Smith's retirement, or was that one of the worst kept secrets? Because, I mean, he had us hanging on still in February about Cameron Smith, Willie Owoni.
That's a good shout for best kept. He did very well with that. I think we didn't know until the ball was kicked basically last season. So he did excellently with that.
I remember the week of, this time last year rather, plus 3 weeks, and we're still thinking he might run out with the Titans. So I remember getting to that first team this Tuesday. Still, I had hope that he was going to be around for one more year. But anyway, you're right. They were incredible. They topped the NRL in points and tries last year. Not only were they good with the ball, they had the second best defence and a for and against at the end of 25 rounds, plus 499. I don't think we'll ever see that again in the NRL era. The most dominant team, bar none. But this year's a whole new proposition, isn't it? Because they head in, they didn't win the comp, they went so close, but that doesn't cut it in the NRL, particularly for Melbourne Storm. So they have to find another way to sort of, if not equal that winning record of 19 straight games, even better it. And it's going to be more difficult this year.
Yeah, it's interesting because every year they get out of the block so quick. They put so much emphasis on the minor premiership, and I know that for a fact because I read Cameron Smith's book, Speak of the Devil, in the summer, and he even said that Bellamy puts a focus on the minor premiership. So they go into the season and they're not trying to peak. Well, they probably are trying to peak in September, but they're trying to peak throughout the year. And I'm not sure if that was maybe their undoing last year. I feel like Penrith and South were probably peaking more at the right time of the year, whereas the Storm obviously were just up the whole time. So maybe does Bellamy look at that and think, let's try to peak later in the year, perhaps?
Yeah, and I know he has rested players in the past, but funny you mentioned Smith's book there. He says in his book that he hated resting. So it just shows you the culture that they set in at the Melbourne Storm, and I'm sure that that's filtered down to the likes of Cameron Munster and Felice Kafusi, you think of another Origin player, or in the past Ryan Hoffman and all these other types that don't like to rest, so that invariably they are first or second at the end of the regular season. I'm looking here though at their draw for this year, and you mentioned the start to the year. Obviously a tough start in terms of their personnel not being on deck for round 1, but beyond that, you look at rounds 4 to 11 from that SuperCoach lens. They played just one of the big 5, and that obviously being the Roosters, Panthers, Manly, or Souths, I'll say. Just one of those teams being the Panthers in round 10 rather, between rounds 4 and 11. So there's that sort of window to capitalise after that first month, or they're getting players back from suspension or whatever, they've got a good 8 weeks there to run into Origin. And I think you look at the draw back in Melbourne, I think they could go unbeaten almost.
Yeah, and they're the sort of team that you could pretty much put your hat on that they'll actually do that. They'll look at those games and they'll just get them done. They won't drop a game here and there. They never do that. So I think you can be pretty much certain that, come round 12, halfway through the year, they'll probably be on top, or at least top 2. And then from there on, they won't stuff it up, and they'll be having a home final or a chance at a home final in week 1. So, yeah, like I said before, I think their judgment comes in September. I think everyone knows they're going to be there. They're going to probably be in the top 4. But it just depends. Can they go that extra step, without Cameron Smith this time?
I just want to bring up their best 17 here. Of course, this is via NRL.com. So you may not agree with all of these. And of course, if you're not watching this, you're listening to us, you can find this on YouTube. So whenever we're referring to these graphics or bring it up on your screen, find us on YouTube at SuperCoach365. Same podcast, but you'll get a little bit extra. Tommy, this best 17, it has George Jennings there, Nick Meaney in 14. I don't think that's how it'll look. I don't think Meaney's your traditional Nico Hines type role where he can play 1 to 7 essentially, and 13 if he has to. Meaney's an out-and-out winger, so I don't think that'll be the case. But you look at this team, 1 to 17, it is still very strong, and some of these names will move on at the end of the year. So maybe a bit of motivation there to send them out on a high.
Yeah, it's a faultless roster, isn't it? Great team. Big news, obviously. I think last week we got the confirmation that Asafa Solomon will actually play. So that's a big help. I think that would have been a bit of a loss, and they would have left them a little bit skinny maybe up front, but now that's been covered. Coates, he's an interesting one. I think we'll get into him in a sec. Munster and Hughes, I'm expecting big things from Munster, as I've said, and I think Hughes is a bit of an unsung gun.
Yeah, let's talk their SuperCoach assets. That's why everyone's here to listen to us. Ryan Pappenhausen, 47% owned. You just have to have him almost, and I'm surprised that number's not above 50, because on his day, he's as good as Turbo, if not better. And again, you might think I'm the biggest Pappenhausen. No, I say that because I don't know. We've seen it. He kicks goals as well. That's my reading. Maybe not better than Turbo. Anyway, Harry Grant, 25%. So these are the big two from the Melbourne Storm.
Yeah, I think we spoke about Harry Grant in the hooker section a few weeks ago. Last year, he didn't even get a full crack at the 9 jersey, and he still had a massive average. He gets a full crack this season, apart from the first round, I believe. And then, perhaps as you say, yeah, I don't know how you don't have to have him in the side. I've got him in. He was one of the first picks for me.
Just the 13 games last year for Ryan Pappenhausen. And I know I've said it a couple of times and you take the piss out of me, but full season, uninjured, playing his best footy, he is the Dally M winner, hands down, because he just brings something that no one else can. And that is including Turbo. He's that good. Pod plays. You mentioned Jerome Hughes a little bit there in Munster. Are you surprised that Hughes is owned by just 10%, given the question marks around Cleary to start the year, and if he's going to be there?
I expect that percentage to jump up dramatically if Cleary is ruled out early stages in the first few rounds. I think Hughes is the definite next best contender for halfback, in my opinion. And then on Munster also, you said perhaps for Dally M. If I had to pick one now, maybe a smoky would be Munster for me.
Either way, whoever wins it, if it is someone from the Melbourne Storm, it's going to be a massive achievement, and it's probably even better coming from that club as opposed to someone you think like a Roger Tuivasa-Sheck in years gone by at the Warriors, where it was Roger or bust, and at the Storm they've probably got 4 names that could win the Dally M, and you wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah.
Meaney and Coates, the wingers, we're thinking that that's the way they'll run out, or is that hard luck to George Jennings? So I think obviously he had his questions defensively to start last year, but he came on. He
did, and he did drop that ball in the prelim final, which was pretty annoying for Storm fans. But Xavier Coates is an interesting one. I know last year a lot of people were keen on him at various times in draft competitions because he had a few good scores. But when he did score tries, his base stats were awful. It'd be like he scored 20 points. So I'm wondering if he is maybe a little bit of a trap, or maybe he could develop a bit more of a work rate at the Storm.
Yeah, definitely a wait and see that one. I guess something we've glossed over it and we've almost taken it for granted is the fact that they are going to be back in Melbourne this year. So you think 12 games or at least 11. I think they're one of their home games is Magic Ground at Suncorp. But 11 games at home. A stat here, I pulled this out today. In the post-Cooper Cronk era, so since Cronk's moved on, they've won 74% of their home games at Amy Park. So round up to 8 out of 10. If they're playing 10 or 11 at home, they're getting 9 or 10 wins this year at home.
Yeah, well, pretty much for as long as we've watched footy, it's been the fortress down there, hasn't it? They don't drop many games in Melbourne. They never have. And the last 2 years, they've done exceptionally well, not really having a home venue. Or they had the Sunshine Coast, and they turned that into a fortress. But I think they'll be very happy to get back to Amy Park. And it's just another reason. $1.60 to make the top 4 the Storm. That's my best bet early days. Jeez.
Yeah, we'll get onto a little bit of that later on with topsport.com.au, of course. Let's wrap this up, though, on the Melbourne Storm. I've got them coming. Well, you've already just sort of declared them there as the minor premiers, all but I've got them running third. I think defensively, maybe they showed at times that they're not quite up to Penrith's level, and I think the Roosters back at the SCG are a completely different beast again. So third for mine, but you've got them right at the top.
I've gone with first. I do think, as I've said a few times, that they're going to have to go that extra step next year, obviously, this year, and have to win a big game without Cameron Smith. But I just think they're the most reliable team in the comp, so I'm happy to put them at first.
The only reason why I maybe don't have them top 2 is I fear Nicho Hynes. What a luxury it was to have him in hindsight. You lose Pappenhausen, you bring in Hynes. You lose Hughes, you bring in Hynes. At a pinch, you lose Munster, you bring in Hynes. I don't think they have that depth this year.
No, you're right. And it was a massive luxury, and not many teams have that. And you were saying before you don't think Meaney will be using that role. You can't see it happening?
I think he can play 1 to 5, but he's not going to come on and ball play at in the halves. You look at Nicho Hynes now; he goes to the Sharks as their predominant playmaker. Nick Meaney isn't that sort of player for mine anyway. All right, so Melbourne Storm, we're pretty sold, and you've almost said Pappenhausen a must-have, and I mean I've got him, you've got him, and 47% of others do as well. But should that be a bit higher?
I'd imagine it will be. Yeah, I think Paps and Teddy is the way to go to start the year if you don't have Turbo. And then I'm pretty keen to work towards Munster. Obviously, Munster missing the first game is quite annoying. You don't want to be behind before the season starts. But I'm going to be trying to work him into my team for that good run that you mentioned between rounds 4 and 12.
Definitely will be the plan to work in some of these big guns. Let's move it on to the biggest gun, and that's Tom Trbojevic of the Manly Seagulls. Their best 17 here, and their best player wears number 1. What are we doing with Manly this year? Because it's almost the elephant in the room, isn't it? Because if Tom's not there, Manly aren't there.
No, that's exactly right. And that was just ridiculous last year, wasn't it? I remember after round 4 or round 5, we were watching a game. I was watching it with you. They were playing the Warriors, and it was one of the worst games you've ever seen. And Manly jagged us, I think it was 13 to 12 point victory. And from then on, they just never looked back. They turned into this absolute gun side. Obviously, Turbo came back and was the catalyst for that. But I don't know. Can lightning strike twice? Can Turbo play as well in 2022 as he did last season?
As a fan, I'd love to see it. As a New South Wales fan, I'd love to see it. But he's owned by just 10%. Now, that sort of tells me is obviously people are balking at the price. But even if people had the faith and the confidence that he could do it again, that number would be higher for mine. And I think you'd be doing everything you could to get him in. And even if it was at the detriment of somewhere else, or you could only run one gun fullback, there's just a hesitancy because we've seen his injuries in his past.
Yeah, I don't know if the 10% is due to that. I really just think he's priced out of the game because you can almost get Paps and Teddy for almost the same price as Turbo. So, not almost, but you know what I'm trying to say. So, I just think he's way too expensive. I have faith that he can go big again, not as big, because I think the numbers that we saw last year from team scoring points, players scoring points, I just don't think we'll see that again. I've heard the NRL Don saying he sort of thinks it'll be a bit of a closer comp this year, and I kind of agree with him in that regard. So I don't think we'll see the ridiculous scores, but I still think players like Turbo will be going pretty big every week.
I wonder what that percentage will be. Just got his fixtures up here for the first 3 weeks. So obviously the Panthers away, the Roosters away. How many people will be pulling that trade button to get in Tommy before that game against the Dogs? It obviously depends on how well he scored the first 2 weeks. And if he's not going to bleed a hell of a lot of cash, maybe that's the go. Bring him in just before that easier. Well, what we think will be an easier fixture anyway.
Yeah, I think you'll see that 10% go up then because that's a hard first 2 games, isn't it, really? Even him at the peak of his powers, he's not always going to score against the best teams in the comp. So
yeah.
I think, you probably might maybe keep your powder dry and just wait. And obviously how he goes will have a big bearing on this next man, Ruben Garrett.
Of course, Garrick, handcuffed almost to Trbojevic. If Tommy's going well, then Garrick's going very well, by his standards anyway. Some numbers around Trbojevic. 28 tries this last year, involved in 40% of the Seagulls' tries. To put that into perspective, Cleary and Luai combined were just 43% at Penrith. So one man at Manly is pretty much producing what two are at the eventual premiers. And the other grand finalists, Walker and Reynolds, combined for just 41%. So Turbo is effectively churning out the output of 4 of the premier halves of the competition by himself. And that's before we even get to his other mate, Daly Cherry Evans, who himself isn't a bad number 7.
No, he's not. And that's obviously amazing stats for Turbo, but do you think Des Hasler sits there and thinks that that's a good sign? I think he doesn't want to have all his eggs in the one basket, you know what I mean?
Well, that's the burning question we've got here. How can they not rely on Tom so much? And it's inevitable, really. I mean, I don't have the numbers to tell you, but you think of those teams in Newcastle Knights in the early 2000s, mid-2000s, and their reliance upon Andrew Johns. It's funny, you take out Joey and you knew straight away the Knights would lose. And I haven't seen that with any team. Even you mentioned Cameron Smith, Melbourne Storm. You could take Smith out and they still had the other two in, well, other 3 at times, and Slater, Cronk and Inglis. And you take out Tom. I've never seen that sort of reliance on one player in my time anyway, since Joey.
Yeah, Thurston and the Cowboys was a little bit similar, but I'd say this is definitely gone to another level. And I don't really see it changing this year. I think if he goes down, God forbid he does, but if he did, I just can't see him doing much. Like, I know DC is a great player, but he's sort of shown before that he can't do it all himself. Even if Turbo doesn't go down, I still think they need a few players to, continue to stand up, because they all peaked last year and they massive effort to, make it deep into the finals. But I don't know if they can do it again this year. I'm really not sure.
Cherry Evans' stats on your screens there, with and without Trbojevic last year. You say he can't do it all by himself. Yeah, I think there's going to be some nervous types if Tommy stays down after a hit this year anyway. Just on that, we mentioned the impact of the Storm going home. Something about these suburban grounds or these smaller boutique stadiums, I think Manly will benefit as a lot from that as well. I looked at Tommy's stats at Brookie, and I know that they called Brett Stewart the Prince of Brookie. He was the king. I think Tommy's the Prince. Tommy Trbojevic, 22 tries in 38 games at Brookie. I tell you now, go and look who they play at Brookvale Oval this year. I think they might play the Roosters and maybe the Panthers. But other than that, I think he can get 15 tries at home alone this year. I can see him getting doubles in almost every home game he plays this year. So put me down for Tommy, at least 15 tries at Brookie Oval this year.
Full of big statements tonight. I like it. I like the enthusiasm. No, but I agree. It is a nice draw. They're a good team at home generally. And, if Turbo can find the same form he did last year, he was scoring tries when he wanted to, basically. So 15 could be easily done. Looking at a few pods now for Manly, Josh Schuster was a name that I remember we saw him in the trials last year against the West Tigers. We thought he played well. He went on to bigger and better things last year. How do we think he's going to go again this season?
I love him as a 5'8". I think, particularly in draft, and I was saying to the NRL Don today, actually, on another one of his podcasts, I think I wouldn't be surprised his average draft rank as it is today, and I know we're still a month out from kickoff, from the first teams even, it's about 45. But I think you compare that with, weigh everything up, and reliability, consistency, and knowing what you're getting from your 5'8", which typically is a shallow position. You're getting Schuster at 60 points per game at 6. I think it's a great play. Not so much as a second row forward. I think there's better options. But again, you marry up his price against a Luke Keary, even just $5,000 more expensive than Luke Keary, who himself has so many question marks about him coming back to the Roosters this year. So I can almost make a case for even starting with Schuster in Classic. That's how much I think he can play a role.
Yeah, you make a good point. I'm just looking at his last 5 scores last year, and his highest he went was 52. So I don't know if there was a reason for that, really. His biggest scores seemed to be at the start of the year. Hopefully that was just a little blip at the end. But obviously he's another player. They're all going to be determined by how Turbo and DCE perform, I think. Another one's Jason Saab. Obviously he was another beneficiary of Turbo's masterclass last year, but when he wasn't scoring points, he was getting some pretty ordinary scores, wasn't he?
Yeah, and I think we saw that in that round 17 game against the Raiders. Everyone brought him in thinking that, this was his week and he's going to go big.
He got 12.
12, that's right. I remember everyone was talking him up. I remember that week. I remember it clearly. It was all about, it was either Tupou at the Roosters. I think the Roosters played that week as well. It was either the Roosters Tupou or Saab. Which one are you going to grab? A lot of people went Saab. Luckily, I think I stayed away from both of them. I guess the one thing they have to improve on is if they are going to go on and, I guess, make a grand final, win a grand final, is they do have to be better against those better teams. They did have a soft run last year, played just 6 games against those big 5 teams I've already mentioned. But I think they can do that. And I think you've mentioned Schuster there and Ola Kawatu as well, another year old, another year wiser. They're not going to head into those games against Souths and the Roosters, Melbourne, Panthers even, with any fear this year. I don't think they will.
No, they'll be more battle-hardened, like you said. That's a good point. They hadn't really had to face those opponents before last year, and now they've done it, so they'll be better for the run. I have said a few times, I feel like they just peaked last year. Everything went well for them once they got Turbo back. It was all just like a kind of a fairy tale. I don't know. I don't see it really happening like that again. I think some of their outside backs could be caught out a little bit more, some of the lesser names. So, look, I don't know. I've got them down for 6th this year, kind of hedging my bets. I think if Turbo goes down, they'd almost miss the finals. But, I've got them about middle of the top 8.
I think they come 4th. I've got them finishing top 4, only because of the Tom factor. And if he's not there, then it's probably closer to 6. And if God forbid that Cherry Evans or Garrett goes down, I don't know who's scoring points for them. If it's not Tom setting it up and Garrick scoring it, then where does it come from? That 40% of involvements in tries, it worries me a hell of a lot.
Yeah, it's an exciting factor, but it's also a dangerous one for Manly fans and their players. So they're going to have to really step up with or without Turbo. They're going to have to step up. So we both got around that middle of the top 8. I think they'll handle the lesser sides pretty well again. But it'll depend how they go against the big teams.
Okay, let's wrap that one up there with the Seagulls. We're going to head to a quick break, a very, very quick break, via topsport.com.au. On the other side, we're chatting the Warriors and the Cowboys.
Having a bet on the racing this week? Top this.
With Top Sport's best of the best multis, top odds are guaranteed. Place a best of the best multi during Saturday Metro meetings for the top fluck or dividend from the best 3 national totes. Plus, there's best of the best to win up to $5,000 too.
Top that. Download the app today. Top Sport. Feel the excitement.
Don't let the game play you. Stay in control. Gamble responsibly.
Welcome back. Tommy, let's rip in straight to this. We've just spoken of the Storm and the Seagulls, of course. Let's chat the teams that are going to be fighting it out for those lower parts in the top 8, we think anyway. The Warriors. To their credit, they've probably punched above their weight in the past 2 years, and we probably thought they would have turned that up back in 2020, let alone pushing through to be almost finals contenders last year. But this is going to be another beast this year when they go home. How do they fare when they go home? I think everyone thinks they're just going to suddenly be even better than they've ever been when they go home after 2 years. But I think it could almost go the other way.
Yeah, I'm not sure it'll work like that either. First of all, I'd like to say it has been a great effort from them to keep up the good work despite not being over 2 years. Quite amazing. But I think almost being together on the Sunshine Coast and the Central Coast, wherever they've been, and maybe it's brought them closer together and they've actually played better as a result of that. So it will be interesting to see when they do go back. I don't think there's any real certainty about if they will get back there this year or not. I kind of hope they do because they deserve it. But that's the watch this space.
Speaking of homecomings, what about this one? Probably no bigger, at least in the Warriors' history anyway. Sean Johnson returning to his boyhood club, and look at the smile on his face there. You can see how much it means to him to put that jersey on again. Just 10 games last year. It was an injury-interrupted season. That average well down beyond his career average. We know him to be a better player than that. He's got a great start here. The Dragons, the Titans, the Tigers. If the Warriors do want to be playing finals footy, they nearly have to win all 3 of those.
Yeah, they do. And Sean Johnson's one of my favourite players. I really love watching him play, and I think he's a bit underrated these days. I still think he has what it takes to be a really exciting player in this game. I think last year he showed some really good form at times. He just injuries, his body let him down, and that's obviously a risk factor going into this season. Just because he's fit now, he could easily, do a hamstring again. I really like the start that he has, and I've got him in my team to begin with. I think those first 3 games, some really good scoring opportunities for him.
Yep, and you mentioned, I think when he was at Cronulla in 2020 and he led them, they played finals that year, I'm pretty sure they did, and it was all on the back of Sean Johnson, and that was, for me, it wasn't the highlight real Sean Johnson, that was the real Sean Johnson, if that makes sense. Like, he was a playmaker, general number 7, playing that traditional role. But yeah, it's going to be interesting, and I mentioned them going home because they have signed and they have bolstered this squad. We mentioned Walsh at the top, but how many players have they signed while they've been in Australia? Matt Lodge springs to mind, Josh Curran, Ewan Aitken, 2 names that are going to be popular with super coaches to start the year. These back rowers, have they even set foot on New Zealand soil? I don't think they have.
That's what I was about to say. Many of their signings have never even played in New Zealand or been in New Zealand. So it's quite an interesting circumstance they're in. I really love their pack this year, the Warriors. Fanua, Blake and Lodge, who we can get to now if we want as potential pods, I think. I think they're both really great workhorses. They both play big minutes. Lodge, I think he misses the first 1 or 2 games due to suspension, and that's a big thing with him. He often gets suspended.
Yeah, the best 17 on your screens now, but not necessarily the side that will run out for round 1 because you mentioned suspension there. Walsh, he won't be there either. Who else we got there? Obviously, Tohu Harris won't be there. He's out until about round 10. So down on troops early, the Warriors, but we know that they can fight. And I guess those names you mentioned there, Curran and Aitken, they typify that. They scrap over an old ball if you threw it at them, those two, because I don't think they know any other way. And Curran particularly, I know he's going to be a popular Supercoach option in the 2RF slot at that price. Aitken probably in the centres if you're going that way. But Curran, he's got some upside to him, and around that McInnes and Madison price, given that draw, I wouldn't vouch against going with Curran early.
No, he was a great story last year, wasn't he? Like, not really many people knew of him at the start of the season. He went on to be one of the better Supercoach finds. His scoring was consistent all year, and he even found the line a few times later in the season. So I think he's a pretty safe option, really, in that price range. Ewan Aitken, I think we're pretty sure he's going to be starting second rower, and looking at his scores that he produced last year, 128, 89, 74, 69, and then a 44, all playing in the second row. So that's pretty good numbers. If you could bank on that every week, you'd be pretty happy.
Yeah, and that's the thing, though, he's going to run out in the back row, but does he play 80 minutes there? That's why I'm a little bit hesitant to just chuck him in it and expect him to churn out 80 minutes in the back row like he did to finish last year, because you look at someone like a Satili Tupanua at the Roosters and how affected he was by getting shifted out. I know that was through injury at the Roosters and he had to play centres and wing at times, but suddenly what looks a golden goose, it turns out to be, anything but, because he's back in the centres and you're paying premium price. I think $480,000 for a centre wing to start. You don't really do it unless you are going to the very top end of Garrick or a Brian To'o.
No, you're right. There is probably some risks there, and I think Nathan Brown, the Warriors coach, has shown a few times to me he makes some weird decisions around team selection. So I wouldn't bank on Aitken, always being there, but I think if he was, he can make a pretty good fist of it. What do you think of Reece Walsh as a potential fullback bot?
I loved it until I realised he was suspended, and I think I waxed lyrical about Reece Walsh, and I said, I think I even said to you, I'm going with Walsh here. And I was, thought about it. I thought I was onto something smart, and turned out I didn't do enough research to know. I think he's out 1 week, maybe 2, at least 1 definitely. And with that, I don't think you can miss out on Teddy against the Knights or Paps against the Tigers. I think they're 2 good fixtures that you can't be missing out on holding a Walsh and hoping that the next week he turns up. Some other names here aside Walsh that are going to spark some interest, at least one of these names, with the suspension of Lodge early and Tohu Harris out, is Aaron Penne. You've got some raps on him. I'm not entirely sold.
It was just a bit of a smoky that I found kind of just in the off-season. I thought he played pretty well at Melbourne last year, and the Warriors have also seen that too. So just with a few injuries and suspensions early doors in the pack for the Warriors, I think he might get a little bit of a run. And they got a nice start, like I said. So I've just thrown him a bone in my team, but no promises.
Questions, the burning questions, will Walsh hang around? We sort of touched on that at the start, and that's definitely going to be something that won't go away, those whispers, and hopefully for the Warriors' sake and for Walsh's sake, probably less so, but hopefully they sort that out sooner rather than later. They either need to bury it, because the longer that drags on, the longer it's going to create noise with Newcastle as well. We already mentioned Ponga. And what happens when they go home? And I'd love the fairy tale. I'd love, 25,000 at Mount Smart every week, but I just don't think... I mean, I'm not saying the crowd's not going to be there, but how long can you play on emotion for the Warriors?
Yeah, I don't think they should read too much into that, like you're saying. I don't think they might get one win out of that fairy tale aspect of it, but I don't think it's really going to last very long. And from what I've read, their families are all pretty, safe and secure up at Redcliffe at the moment. So I don't think they're going to be moving anytime soon. Anyway, we'll wait and see what happens with that. I've got them in for 10th this year. I can see them possibly sneaking into the bottom of the 8 if they played their best every week, but they're so inconsistent, the Warriors, and we've known that for many years now, and they'll play one great game and then play 3 shockers. So I can't trust them, but I wouldn't be surprised if they could sneak in.
I think the thing that hurts them all that I've got them running 11th. I think the thing that stops them from sneaking into the 8, I do agree with you, that top 8 price, $4, I think they're probably better than a 25% chance to make the top 8, because they are going to knock off a couple of those teams around them, the Sharks, the Raiders, the Titans maybe even. That's why those first 3 games I think are so important to the Warriors if they do want to play finals footy, because they are against 3 teams that they're going to be, they're 4-point games essentially. But yeah, I guess going back to it, I don't think they will make the 8, because I think there's just going to be so many interruptions and disruptions, and I don't know. They're always close, but they're never close enough, the Warriors. How many games did they lose by 6 points or less last year? They're just always in the contest without ever prevailing, really.
Yeah, it's like I was saying before, they're just inconsistent. You can't really trust them. The games you think that they will win, they'll find a way to lose. So yeah, I'd like to see them make the A, because like I said a few times, Johnson and Walsh, I think they'll be great to watch. I like Curran, but I don't know. There's just something stopping me actually tipping them in the 8, isn't there?
Could you imagine they finish 8th, they somehow knock off 5th, and then they get that, is it the home final week 2? Or is that the old format I'm thinking
Not
of?
anymore.
I was going to say, imagine a packed Eden Park.
Yeah.
Anyway, dare to dream, mate. Anyway, read up on your finals format. Again, another thing that hurts him is Tohu Harris. Not there for 10 weeks. He's their best, most consistent player in a team that lacks consistency. They're going to really miss Tohu Harris. But the Warriors, 11th for mine and 10th for yours. All right, let's wrap this up with a team that we don't think is going to be playing finals footy, which is a shame, because this team was a finals ever present in recent years, but the Cowboys, that's who we're speaking of here. Look at this team. It doesn't scream finals footy for mine.
No, not for mine either. They've got, how I'd describe it really, is 2 superstars, or 2 people who are capable of being superstars, Valentine Holmes and Jason Taumalolo. And then the rest of them are just kind of average first graders, I have to be honest. And the problem is that both their superstars are not performing like superstars. Val hasn't been the same since he came back from the NFL, and Taumalolo's output was well down last year. So, yeah, just a real lack of quality across the board at the Cowboys, I think.
What about the man on your screen there, Tommy? Chad Townsend. It's an interesting signing, and I've got here in the notes that Chad Townsend has just 1 win of his past 12 NRL matches in time spent at the Sharks and Warriors, and he went 0-5 in his move to the Warriors last year. So they signed him to get them into finals footy, and he did the complete opposite. He couldn't ice them a game.
Yeah, that was a bizarre signing, because they had Sean O'Sullivan, Chanel Harris-DeVita. I don't know why they needed Townsend as well, but interesting signing from the Cows. They've paid big overs for him too. He can do a job on his day. Like, I'm very critical of him, but if he could just, kick to corners, organise the team, they might be all right. But I don't know. I just don't see enough in their spine, really. Like, he's a solid first grader, Townsend, but is there enough really around him to get you excited? I don't think so.
And again, I don't want this to be a festival of just potting Chad, but it seemed a panic buy for mine, because they needed a 7 to do something. I mean, they're just meandering around with no direction. And then obviously I think they signed Dearden before they signed Townsend. So poor Tommy Dearden, he goes there thinking he's going to play 25 first-grade games, and then they bring in a premiership winner on top of him, albeit not at his best, Chad Townsend. So he's not out of the race to play halfback, Dearden, but going off the form to finish the last year, I actually have Dearden in front of Townsend. It won't be the way they run out, but Dearden was actually half decent, I thought, in his finals few games at the Cowboys last year.
Yeah, he had that awful stat for a while, and I can't remember how many games he lost in a row, but he finally got that win. He actually wasn't too bad. He played better come the end of the year. Townsend, like you said, they will get the nod just from his experience within the game. But yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if he had a few off games that we don't see Tommy Dearden back in the league.
Yep. Also in the notes here, just why they would let Clifford go. I know that wasn't working out particularly well while he was there, but you just think you invest in someone like that, and Clifford, a junior Maroon in his days, obviously has some potential. And anyway, they've gone with Chad and Tommy Dearden as well. The Cowboys, though, the third most missed tackles last year, the second most ineffective tackles. They conceded the most offloads, the most line breaks, and most tries. They conceded 748 points per game at about 32 points per game. There's no wonder why this team is not playing finals footy.
No, they were really bad last year. Like, they were just lucky that the Dogs are in the same comp as them, because any other year that, we'd be laughing at the Cowboys because, yeah, they were really poor. I think they have enough. Probably the only positive I see in this team, and I'm being pretty critical of them at the moment, but I like their kind of young forward pack. I think there's a few names there in the next few years we'll see some good things from. Helam Lukey, Nanai, Tom Gilbert's not too bad, Ruben Cotter. Griffin Neem's another one. He's not in this 17, but he could get a run. So there's maybe some green shoots for the future. But as far as this season goes, it's all down to, Holmes or Tamalolo stepping up. And I don't really know if we're even going to see that, are we?
What about Val in the centres? I know he's been pictured wearing the jersey 3 and Hammer will go to 1. Just speaking of their SuperCoach assets now, let's bring it back to the game. I tried to think of their best players. You've obviously nailed the two there, Holmes and Tamalolo, but I had to put question marks next to both of them because we rewind this 3 years ago. They're both massive SuperCoach assets. Fast forward to today, I can't even confirm that they are, and that's a sad indictment on where the Cowboys are at.
Why is Holmes not fullback? Because I know it's a long time since he's had his best. I'm right now on my computer, I'm on Valentine's Holmes 2018 SuperCoach profile, and he finished the year with his lowest score was about 70 in the last 10 games. Like, he was on an absolute Tom Tavorovich tear that season.
Yeah.
But he went to NFL and he just has not been the same since. But surely Todd Payton just throws him in at fullback and says, "Re-find your best, mate."
You think I agree with you 100%, and we all saw that Sharks year in 2018 and how he brought them into the finals. They got them within one game of a grand final, beaten only by the Melbourne Storm in Melbourne, which is, all right, you get to the prelim final, you cop the Storm, you're probably going to be happy with that year. But that was all down to Val. They've obviously put in the faith in the Hammer, and he's quick, but I looked at these scores last year. I know SuperCoach scores aren't everything, but he had 2 games, I think, last year to finish off where he scored a try in both of them at fullback, and he just cracked 50 points in both of those games. So it just shows you he's not your work rate fullback. He doesn't have his hands on the ball. It's that highlight moment. He either busts the line, scores a try, but he's not your out and out Tommy Turbo, your Tedesco type fullback.
No, he's not your modern day fullback that we see at other clubs. I think Holmes can be. So maybe, if Holmes is killing it in the centres or on the wing, maybe we'll see him move back to fullback at some stage. Who knows? But Tamalolo, the other misfiring star, do we see potentially a return to form this year? Will we see more minutes maybe?
We all know what he's capable of. Your question there, will we see it? I don't know. And they're trying to preserve him, but I think you almost got to just let him be Tamalolo, or else why would you pay $1 million a year for someone who you could really be picking up 300,000 and get them to churn out 40 minutes?
Yeah, I get what Payton has said, that he wants to preserve him, and I feel like we're going to see a similar thing with Payne Haas. If he keeps delivering the sort of numbers that he does, is he going to get to 28 and be burnt out? I don't know, but yeah, for the Cowboys to get their money's worth this year, you'd have to think that Talmo gets more minutes, and from a SuperCoach lens, hopefully he does. I'm not going to risk him like I did last year, but I hope he can get back to some form anyway, because I'd like to see the Cows at least show some face this year.
I think I said to you this time last year when there was the whispers going around about Tamalolo and how many minutes would he play. And I think our exact words were, how arrogant of a coach who's never coached in the NRL to be worrying about the form of a bloke in 5 years' time before he's even run out through round one. So, anyway, I've got him coming 15th. What about you?
Yeah, 15th for me as well. They could easily come last. I'm just going to stick the boot to another team on another podcast who I think will come last. But yeah, just don't see a lot going for them this year. I see in the notes here, need to turn their home ground into a fortress. And I agree with that. They've spent all the money on that home ground. It's a really nice stadium, but it was a pretty easy place to go in 2021.
Teams went up there for a weekend holiday and they came back with 2 points. Yeah, I mean, there's probably not too much to go on about the Cowboys. Just one thing I will say, there has been a bit of chat about Reuben Cotter and the hype about Reuben Cotter. How will he go if he plays 13 and if they do shift Tamalolo? But for mine, I think Tamalolo, he's a bit like Paul Gallen. He's a little bit stubborn. He needs to wear that 13 jersey. I know Gal always wanted to wear the 13. It doesn't really matter. You play the same role. But I don't see Cotter breaking into this first 13 and playing 55, 60 minutes like a lot of super coaches are hoping.
It's interesting. I keep seeing his name absolutely everywhere in regards to SuperCoach, and he had some good performances last year. But like you said, like where does he break into this team? I don't know. The Cowboys isn't that strong of a roster, so you think you could get in somewhere, but I wouldn't think it's starting 13 either.
No, and even you're carrying Jake Granville on the bench, which reduces his limited out. Or I mean, his output, even if he's coming on to replace a Robbo, is limited because he's not coming on to play hooker. So,
well, probably not, but we will see him in the hooking role this weekend, funnily enough. So we might get a little insight into how he actually does go at hooker.
I think Reece Robson doesn't have too much to worry about there. All right, Tommy, we're going to throw to another quick break. On the other side of the break, we're chatting listeners' questions. We've got a couple to get through.
Having a bet on sport this week? Top this.
Whether you're into cricket and curling or golf and greyhounds, Top Sport will let you on for plenty. And with literally hundreds of markets from your own backyard to the international stage, Top Sport has you well covered. So if you want to get the top odds every time, bet with Top Sport.
Top that. Download the app today. Top Sport. Feel the excitement.
Don't let the game play you. Stay in control. Gamble responsibly.
Welcome back. SuperCoach365 podcast brought to you by topsport.com.au. And Tommy, how about this for an offer? You weren't here when we introduced it, but it's been up in the works for some time now. Thanks to the good folk at topsport.com.au, they've put together a SuperCoach365 Futures Special. Now, I can say with authority that this has been absolutely smashed in the betting. You see it on your screens now. What a special it is. It was even more special. It's been $7 into $5. So the punters have come in droves. Storm top 4, Roosters top 6, Sharks top 8, Knights to miss the 8, $5. Now, if you've got a spare 5 or 10 on you and you want to make it 25 or 50, you could do so responsibly with topsport.com.au because that looks money for jam for mine.
Yeah, well, we were excited about it at 7. I still am at $5, but it's definitely been well found, hasn't it? And why not, really? I think all those look pretty good on paper, and we've kind of said that in our previews here. We're going to continue in our following podcast. So, yeah, gamble responsibly if you gamble.
Yeah, exactly right. Not for everyone. Tristan's messaged me during the week, and he says, depending on whether that gets up or not, they might not be able to afford to sponsor us next year. So we're hedging our bets there for the punter and our listeners here. Of course, if you aren't a customer and you'd like to become a customer and you want to be involved in great offers like that and you want to have a dabble on the footy each weekend, you can do so. Go to our Instagram bio. You'll find the link there, our referral code, and click that sign up. Use the code SCoach365 and the guys will look after you a lot. I can say that. Okay, Tommy, listen to questions. Our favourite part. We leave the best till last. And I'm going to start with one here from our good mate Blake of Blake's Brushworks fame. And he says to us, who's your number one SuperCoach gun from each of these teams? And they can't share the same position. So we might just let that linger in the background. So think of one for each team, the best player, and they can't share positions. So you can't have Pappenhausen and Trbojevic, for example. We'll come back to that at the end. We'll finish on that one. Pat Salby asks us, can you start with Munster and Grant in round 1? Both of them won't be there for round 1. And I know this is something that you've juggled, Tommy, yourself.
Yeah, it's tough because I definitely wanted Munster, and Grant makes a great case as well. I don't think you can have both in round 1. I just think you you don't want to be behind everyone else after 1 week. I just think you lose motivation and it's hard to make up ground in SuperCoach. So I don't think you can have both in round one. What about you?
No, I don't like Munster, to be honest, at that price. I know he's probably going to come out and have a great rounds 2, 3, 4, but I think I mentioned that draw for the Storm opening up after that first month, and if he loses a bit of cash against Souths and maybe even the Bulldogs and he struggles to find his feet early, I don't know. At the price, I'm not diving into Munster. Grant, I'd maybe be a little bit more inclined because he is clearly the best in that position, so I'd maybe be happy to run with a Randall or a cheapie there if it's not Randall in that first week. Or even start with someone like McInnes and trade up if you want to shift your second row and then bump McInnes down. Sorry. So yes to Grant, I can make a case for that, but not for Munster. Next one here, Cody So. What Storm cheapies will get good minutes? Spoken about this a couple of times, but probably looks like Tepoe Mairoa. But even that's up in the air now with Tui and Nelson both confirmed. Well, not Tui, but he's back at training, and Nelson is obviously back at training as well.
Yeah, less enthused once I heard about Nelson and Sofa-Solomona actually playing. There's not really such thing as a Storm cheapie, is there? They all seem to be pretty well thought of on SuperCoach. I'd probably look at other teams, really, for cheapies.
Yeah, Jack Howarth. I don't know why they've said... Well, I do know, because it's a Storm podcast, but Storm cheapies... Yeah, it's hard. Jack Howarth. I think he'll make his debut, so just keep him there. 175k, I think he'll get a run around Origin time, and again, Bromwich is on the way out, Kenny that is, so he may get time on an edge, and he's touted as the next big thing. So Jack Howarth, I think you could do worse than stashing him on your bench. Brody Copeland asks us here, how can you make a team with Munster and Grant? Well, sort of already answered that. I wouldn't go about doing it, but if you want to, you're obviously going to be short elsewhere because I don't think you can stack your whole spine with Storm players as good as they are, because we're obviously leaning towards Pappenhausen at 1 and maybe Grant, but I wouldn't go all 3 anyway.
No, it's an interesting one because that theory in general, do you want to have, a lot of your team coming from the same NRL team? I don't know, because then you kind of reliant on that NRL team doing well. When it's Melbourne Storm, they're probably going to do well, so it's probably not a bad theory, but I don't like having all the same players from the same teams. So I've got Paps at the moment. I'm going to work towards Munster, and I'm just going to go without Harry Grant for now.
Yeah, and this is probably a completely different conversation if they're all there fit and not suspended for round 1. But as it is, that's the way it is. All right, Tommy, let's finish this off with that question from Blake at the start. I've made some notes here while you were gibbering away, and I might start then and give you a little bit of extra time to think. So one from each team. If you had to pick one, Tom Trbojevic is probably a no-brainer at the fullback role, even though I said Paps would be better, but I think I'd be silly if I didn't say Turbo. Sean Johnson at 5'8", Jerome Hughes at halfback, and Reece Robson at hooker.
I was really expecting you to say Ryan Pappenhausen there instead of Turbo. I was ready to come and smash you about it. But
throw in Paps at 1, Paps 1, SJ 6, DCE 7, Robbo 9. That'll do me.
Yeah, cool. I'll go Turbo from Manly at 1, Munster from the Storm at 5'8", Johnson halfback from the Warriors, and the Cowboys. Not much doing. Mate, Robson's not a bad shout that you said there. Cotter, if he gets to run, mate, honestly, don't put Cowboys in your team. That would be my advice. Stay
well away from North Queensland. All right, Tommy, good episode. That was another 4 teams in the books. Follow us at SuperCoach365. We'll have another episode coming up very, very soon. Looking forward to that one, Tommy.
Absolutely, mate. Keen for it. Only 5 days from the All Stars, a month from the NRL. Can't wait.
Between now and then, as we say, follow us on socials, YouTube as well. Subscribe, like, thumbs up, turn on your notifications. We're not going anywhere. Plenty of podcasts coming your way this week, next week, right through the season.